Tell me the tales that we all used to know long, long ago, long, long ago. Tell me the tales that we all used to know long, long ago, long ago, long, long ago, long, long ago, long, long ago, long, long ago. Tell me the tale. Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Haron. I've got, I hope, an interesting show this evening. I'm going to go over the last selectmen meeting. The first thing I do is go over the agenda quickly. January 11th, and got the wrong date on there, but it's 2008. Comments, we'll give a few comments for a while tonight. We have a lot of new watchers now, I'm told, when I go down the streets of Winsted, so I'm going to just rephrase a bit about what this program's all about for those people. The introductory song is Oh Dear, What Can the Matter Be, an old English ballad. Many people have asked me what the theme song was. At the end of the program, I play in honor of my great-grandfather who was in the Civil War, and it's John Brown's Body, also known as a Battle Hymn of the Republic. So that's in his honor. Tonight we'll talk about the last selectmen meeting, which was Monday. A major progress status report, we'll bring that up. I'm not going to talk too much about the major decision, but I am going to review the meeting and do an analysis of the meeting. And then I'm going to have a few other things on the show. I do have a guest tonight as well, and I am also going to have another background picture, which I hope you'll recognize when you see it. The first thing I want to tell you about is my guest for this evening, and that's Mr. Anthony J. Tony Canavo. Tony Canavo is one of our Winsted's most interesting senior citizens. He's been around a long time. He's done the town an awful lot of good. And I'm going to pay tribute to him tonight for a few minutes and thank his family for letting him do all the things he did over the last 50 years. I'm sure it took away a lot from his family life, although he does have an interesting family, and they're all work quite well together. Tony, as I said, he's 79 years old now. He's a Democrat. He wasn't always a Democrat. He started out as a Democrat, and then somewhere along the line he switched to be an independent so that he could run for office as an independent, and he became the mayor, and he was mayor of the town way long, long ago. That's why I played that song, Long, Long Ago, in the beginning of the program. That's in honor of Tony. He has done a lot of things for the town. He brought in a lot of business. He worked a lot on the industrial parks up there along the corridor and on the way to Colebrook. He's just been involved in everything. One of the latest things he did was he put the history books together that you'll see advertised on this channel and that you can purchase from the town. I've given a lot away to the town people in various committees and things, and I have a bunch myself, and they're very, very interesting, and it's thanks to Tony that we have these modern copies. He has some other projects he's working on, too, from a historical viewpoint. He was recently on the historical program on Channel 13 that they had, and he contributed to that. But he's always contributing. He's always got ideas, and he's been a big help to me in his later years here, where I came back from retirement and I wanted to know more about the town. I started to pick Tony's brain, and he's been very helpful to me and taught me a lot about the history of the town and the history of the politics and all. Now, Tony, as I said, is a Democrat. So this is the second Democrat I've had on here now. And if Democrats are businessmen, then I'm really like them. So I try to promote Democrats that are businessmen because they think a lot like I do. We have a lot in common. We don't agree on everything, Tony and I. The picture you see on your screen now is Tony last night coming to the commission I'm on for the charter change and stating his views, some of which I agree with, some of which I'm still thinking about. But basically, Tony's view is that where we do really agree is that we need to empower the town manager. And we make sure that the town manager can do 95% of the things we need to do, and then only go get a direction from the Finance Committee and Selectmen when you need some help. So that's what we want to try to achieve. And I'm going to talk a lot about that tonight, and that's one of the reasons why I invited Tony's picture here to come along with us. Tony's a lifelong Winston resident. He attended local schools. He's a graduate of the University of Connecticut and a World War II Navy veteran. Tony's married. He has 4 children and 4 stepchildren that he's very proud of. A local businessman since the early 50s, he currently owns a real estate agency, A.J. Canavo and Associates, and Canavo Construction, Inc., and he runs along with his sons, Bob and Mark, who work very hard, and his daughter, Donna. Beginning in 1959, Tony has held various positions and has been an active participant on local boards and committees. Everywhere you go, you see signs of Tony, which is good. He was the City of Winsted, 1956, President of the Winsted Chamber of Commerce. In 1959, he was appointed to the Board of Selectmen. In 1963 to 65, he was Mayor of Winsted as an independent, and he worked with the Republicans and the Democrats and gained their cooperation, and I think probably maybe that's the last time we had a lot of cooperation there on the Selectmen Board, but and I wasn't around then. 59, that's when I was working over in Hartford for G. Fox, so I didn't know Tony in those days. I didn't know him until I bought my cottage up at Highland Lake in 1973. 1963 to 65, as I said, he was Mayor of Winsted. He was on the Economic Development Commission for over 20 years. And my hat's off to him for that. I don't know if I could do that. Planning and Zoning Commission, over 20 years. He was chairman before he retired. And he was on the Mad River Dam Committee. And some of his other activities were, he was on the Gilbert School Building Committee, town representative and trustee. He was on the Northwest Community College Regional Advisory Board, the Winston Savings Bank Incorporator, and Northwest Community Bank Advisory Board. A trustee of the Gilbert School. He was on the advisory board of the Northwest Connecticut Community College, and they recently gave him a nice thank you about a year ago or so. He was on the Planning and Zoning Commission, as I said, as chairman until just a few years ago. And for a long time, Tony was working hard to try to get the Plan of Conservation and Development updated. We're going to be talking a bit about that again tonight, too, mainly as a status item. But he did a lot of good, still does a lot of good, and I'm proud to be his friend, and I'm glad he's helped me as much as he has, and now I'm going to try to help him a little over the next few years and see if I can improve things there. I'm going to leave Tony's picture up for a while because I want to talk about, that's him up there at the Charter Revision meeting last night. The first public hearing was held on Wednesday, January 9th in the Town Hall. They switched it from Pearson Band Room, which I told you it would be last week, to the Town Hall because of the problem they had with the fire alarm system over there, and they didn't think it was safe to, well, I guess it's safe there, but they just didn't want to have any more traffic there than they needed to have. So we were in the Town Hall, and the people fit. There were about 25 or so, give or take, plus or minus people there, residents of the town attended. A potpourri of suggestions were made by 10 plus or minus or so residents. They brought up a lot of good points, and the meeting was cordial, and it was professional, and much more than I perhaps expected it to be. So I thank all the people who attended for keeping it professional. The main reason for the commission is to recommend, or not, a mayoral form of government for the town of Winchester. There has to be a lot of thought given to that subject. There will be a lot of meetings. There's another meeting coming up on the 22nd of January where the public is welcome, and they will be allowed to ask questions for the first 15 minutes or so before we go into a mode where they can't ask questions, but they can still sit there and listen to all the discussion. So I hope that you attend and you listen. Last night it was very one-sided. There were most of the people there out of the group, a lot of husbands and wives too there. They were there basically not in favor of having an elected mayoral form of government, but there were a few people there who were in favor, and then there were some who were probably in neutral at this particular time. So, and I predicted that when I told you last time that, not a lot of people come out to these meetings that are in favor of what's presented. They're usually the people who don't want to see whatever's presented. They want to see it amended or changed or perhaps not done at all. So with that, I want to thank Tony again, and then I'm going to now switch to a different picture of our town manager, Bruce Grezik, and I'm going to be talking more about what happened at the meeting on Monday night. And when you see Bruce, we'll be thanking him tonight. And none of these comments I'm going to make are Bruce's idea. They're all my ideas. So, I have learned a lot from Bruce in the very short time he's been there, a couple of months. I've gone in to see him a few times and picked his brain and tried to learn from him and understand his thought process, and I'm very impressed, very impressed. We kind of wish he would stay, as a lot of people in town are, kind of wish he would stay. There's no reflection on the last town manager. It's just that a change has been made, and my view is, well, work as best I can with he who's there, and then when the next person comes in, I'll work with them as well. So we all want to be positive, and we all want to work, and we all want to get along well together. So now the January 7th meeting last Monday was, I'm going to give you what I think are my positive comments on this meeting. One is, it was a well-balanced meeting. I don't think I've seen a meeting as balanced as that since I've been back in 4 or 5 years. It was very good. No one or two people dominated the discussion. The discussion was, everybody participated, and nobody really hogged the stage, so to speak. It was very businesslike. There was a minimal amount of finger pointing. There were a few remarks there I thought were out of character, but basically it was a good meeting, and there was no finger pointing. A key decision was made. A very key decision was made. The key decision for Winston and its taxpayers, which we'll be talking about tonight. I think it's going to make a big turnaround for Winston in the long run, not the short run, but in the long run financially, if it all happens. But we have made some progress. There was no contentious political comments to the press afterwards, as far as I could see. I mean, I do see in the local Winston paper, they tend to make more, a little more hay of this stuff than the Register and the Republican. They've been very, very good, and I I thank everybody for that, because I think that helps our image, which again we will talk a bit tonight. Plenty of facts were available at the meeting, and when there weren't facts available, somebody brought up facts to correct the things that weren't factual. So facts are very important. We talked a lot about that over the last few months, and we like to see facts, no supposition. And there may be things that people can do to improve that situation, but it was very good. Excellent interim town manager participation. I was very, very impressed with how fast Mr. Grezik has come up to speed, how much he knows about the town, how well he conducts himself in the meetings, and how he deals with the facts. And he seems to have facts available at his fingertips, and he seems to be gaining control of the situation, and I think we're all going to be very comfortable with him in the long run. So thank you, Bruce, for spending the time. I know he's there early in the morning, because I go down myself very early in the morning to try to catch people before I go over to the library, the university, to prepare for this program. And so I see him there almost every day, very early in the morning. And he spends a good solid day there, and he talks to people. And I can tell you, if you want to meet with him, you could call down there and have an appointment and talk to him. And he'll talk to you just like he talks to me or anybody else, the mayor or the selectman or anybody. He's very straightforward, and he'll tell you what he thinks. And I'm sure you'll be very impressed with him. And it was a reasonable time frame for the meeting itself. The first introductory comments, public comment, was about 22 minutes, and the meeting itself was about an hour. I think it should have been more like half an hour, but you know me, I'm always trying to get this time down so that we can spend the time on what I would consider to be more important things, more higher level policy things. So now, if we can switch to the slides again, I'm going to show you a bit about the meeting, and it always takes me a little while to get in sync here between my two piles of paper, so I'll be with you in a second. But well, actually, before I did that, I wanted to go over a couple other things. Let me just say, before I go over that, just leave the camera there. I want to tell you a bit why I started this program, and what the intent of the program, Planning for Success, is. That's this program right now. And what I wanted to do was share my business experience with the town of Winchester. I've got a lot of business experience, probably 45 years or so, not counting my younger work experience since I was 11, but just since I got out of university. And wanted to do that because I saw the need for it here in Winchester. And I said, my son told me, boy, Dad, you can help these people. So I started this program to demonstrate how to run a town like a business, using the town of Winchester as an example. I'm not saying my ideas are the only ideas, and I'm not saying everybody should follow them, but I just want to use this as a test example for everybody, so you can see how businesses work and how people can handle their problems. And then last but not least, I wanted to help the taxpayers of the town of Winchester to understand and deal with the town's predicament. And number one, identify the problem, propose required solutions, provide organization for success, provide an environment for success. And we're kind of down in this area now, expediting the solution, providing the necessary disciplines that are needed, and that's one of the reasons why we're looking at the charter, and then the necessary management techniques we'll be talking about those on and off, and using examples of the town. And my own mission personal mission is to try to run the town as much like a business as practical, get the businessmen elected for all 7 selectmen seats in the next election in a year and a half or so, or whenever the next election is, and then get businessmen elected for the majority, if not all, the Board of Education seats. I feel strongly that the Board of Education problem is more a business problem, and that they're kind of hiding to nothing there in this environment in the state and all that. And they're very good people. They deserve the best. But on the other hand, we have to be able to afford the best. So that's what we're kind of working on now. So I wanted to go over that with you. And I also want to make it very clear to you, especially since there's new shows starting up now, and there's a few other shows on. I'm not running for office, and I never will be running for office. I might be running for Paris, and I might be running for Cajun country out in Louisiana, but I'm not going to be running for office. So we try to be a non-political show. If businessmen are good, like Tony Canavo or Tony Mishakowski or anybody like that, and they run for office, I'll be backing them, you know. And if they're in any other party or they're independents, Doesn't matter to me. I'm more interested in running the town like a business and making sure that we do our best to get this town profitable, on its feet, and successful. So that's what I'm here for. And now we will go back to the first Board of Selectmen on a slide that I had. I'll put it up there again. Okay, what they talked about at the meeting, and I'll go through it kind of quickly because I have a lot of comments to make about this meeting. I don't know if I'll be able to get them all in, but the first was the approval of the minutes. That was always has to be done. Boards and commissions, I divided into two pieces. I have a red piece and a, I left it in green. Green is non-policy issues. And I kind of think on a boards and commission, with the exception of one thing that happened this week, probably shouldn't be at the Board of Selectmen meeting by going around to the selectmen asking them about the liaison reports. I think my own version is, and it's purely my vision, maybe the charter says something different and I haven't been able to find it, but that probably should be the town manager. He should include it in his report because he's really the one who deals with all these people, and his people deal with all these commissions, so he should know where they stand. And then if he needs something from any of the selectmen while he's giving his report, by the way, there's very seldom anything in these reports. There was one nomination made this week by one of the selectmen, but otherwise everybody doesn't have much to say. So I would say let's let the town manager handle that, and then the selectmen can back them up if there is an issue that needs to be spoken about. Now, policy is red. And the town manager report, I've divided into two pieces, a red part because I thought it was more policy stuff, and then I've added a new color this week because people told me they couldn't see the colors. They were too small last time. I think Tony Canavo told me that. But basically, the town manager's report is, there was a motion to waive a bid for a plow repair. Their plow got damaged and they wanted to waive the bidding process because they were in an emergency situation. So that happened. It was done unanimously. They need to apply for a steep grant by February 28th. That's a good opportunity for us as a town. And then there was a budget update. The budget update was basically that the budget is under control. So when I make my comments tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I think there was way too much discussion on that issue. Mr. Grezzik is on top of the budget. He seems to be comfortable with it. He has issues to deal with, but he's dealing with them, and we should let him deal with them. We shouldn't be trying to micromanage that. Now, I look like I got the wrong color on this, but I'm going to put it up anyway. I had a little trouble with the colors this week because I tried purple and purple didn't work when I printed it out. So this should be a green one because I think this is the part, or yellow one, I'm sorry, because this is the part of the manager's report. Matter of fact, on this one it's correct, so I'll put this up. The town manager report, this is the part that I think is more informational. So I created a new color, yellow, for informational. And that is that there was a blackout report on the blackout last week, need of equipment for cleaning sidewalks, which is very important. As Mr. Grezzik pointed out, if we're going to ask residents to clean our sidewalks, then we, the town, better clean our sidewalks. To do that, they need some equipment they're going to put in for that. So that's good. And it'll be Public Works is going to look at that and try to get it into the budget one way or another for next year or this year or whenever. He mentioned that he's looking into some health proposal stuff. That's good for our health insurance, where we can all win, employees and town. That may or may never happen, but he's looking at it, he's trying, and that's good. And then the car fires on Main Street, he pointed out that there were the car fires on Main Street, and there's something being done there with a small grant from the government that might help in that area with some cameras and things like that. Okay, and then there was a town attorney reappointment. That's definitely was a policy issue. We have reappointed the town attorney, and everybody's moving on now, and that's behind us, so I'm happy to see that. It was done in a very professional manner, so thanks for that. The new town manager search update. I got the words around backwards there, but new town manager search update. There was a discussion about that, where we stand on that. That's policy. Plan of conservation and development and ADA. There was an agreement, and this is the important decision I said was made the other night, and we'll talk more about it later, but the agreement to spend the existing funds that we have in budgets now to progress on the update of the plan of conservation and development. A very, very big thing for this town, and very helpful, and everybody's cooperated, all the committees and commissions and everybody, and they are going to fund some updates to that plan which are needed for progress, and that's a real, probably the biggest decision's been made since I've been back here in the last 3-4 years. Winston Furniture Company update, I put that green. That went fairly smoothly. Basically, there's not much we can do about blight there. They have put the place up, and it's been up for sale. And over time, it probably will be sold. It could take a long time to do that, but the owners are doing their best. And anything we could do to help them, if anybody has any ideas, knows any buyers, then let us know. And then tax relief for seniors, that's we're still waiting for information on that. And that will come through the town manager when it's ready, and then they will discuss that. That's been tabled for a few weeks now, and it's about time that they get the information, get that squared away. We need to know what it's got to cost the town before we can approve, or not we, they can approve this that thing. When I say we, I always mean the town, and not any individual group or people or party or anything. Okay, and then next policy issue is a letter from the Board of Education requesting a joint meeting, possible dates, January 16 or 17. The Board of Education is going to look at that. They might have done it already, but they're going to look at it, they're going to agree some dates, and then there's going to be a joint meeting. And that'll be an interesting meeting for all. Whether it'll be on TV or not, I do not know, but keep your eye out for that. And then there was an issue about the use of the town letterhead for, needed a signature and agreement at that level so that certain people in town can take part in the Penguin Plunge and use the letterhead for that, the mayor and whoever else. And then there's going to be a presentation at the next meeting from Planometrics, which has got to do with the plan of conservation and development. I put green on that because I really personally don't think it should be a presentation at the selectmen meeting. Now, I know they wouldn't have a presentation unless they thought they needed it, but in general, it's best to have these presentations done at the right level in the organization and not at the selectmen meeting. But this time it'll be there, so I put that in green. And then there were a couple I put that were informational on here, and one was free video phones that are going to be appropriated by the town. They're getting them free. They just have to do some electric wiring. So that was brought to the attention of the selectmen. And then a salute to the flag participation by the Girl Scouts as well as the Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts or Brownies or whatever. That was brought up. They are, Jeff Liskin's trying to find some people. If anybody out there knows any Girl Scouts or Brownies or whatever they're called nowadays to participate, let Jeff know, or somebody on the selectmen board, town manager, anybody. And then I just put in this new yellow color. That's for information and public relations. We get a bit of that at the selectmen meeting, and personally I think a lot of it's unnecessary, but they think it's necessary, and that's what counts. So I'll just put them in yellow when they do it, and we'll go from there. Now, the major status report that I've been doing, not much has changed on that. Still in the same thing. Probably some things won't change for quite a while, but I'm still waiting for them to establish and publish the high-level business priorities. They may never do it. That's their prerogative. Delegate authority for line management to make a plan and decisions 95% of the time. I think still got a long way to go there yet, although we are making progress. That's what the blue is, progress. And then change the charter where necessary to run like a business. We are looking at it now. The commission has started. We may not change the charter, but at least it's being looked at. And so we'll follow that and then either drop it or whatever when it gets done. And then the 5-year financial objectives, produce the plan to achieve those objectives, and review and make decisions when necessarily quarterly, just like the Harvard sort of business approach. They may never do that, but I'm going to keep watching it until I have to yell uncle and say it isn't going to be done, but that's what they should be doing, in my opinion. Okay, so red means achieved, blue means in progress. I will put yellow on here next time for not started yet and not underway. Now, we have a lot on the important decisions that I put up the first time I was looking at these. I'll just put up the first and last pages now. But we're up to number somewhere up in the 40s. I'm going to put that. I'm not going to dwell on all these. We got a whole thick packet here of papers because we've made so many decisions here in the last couple of months. So I'm going to put up what happened just in the last meeting, and then there's 2 pages here for that. So let me take this page out. All right, what happens in the last meeting was a table, number 41, table discussion of Judy Dixon, that was the meeting before. Approved fund transfer for the police department, that was the meeting before. Okay, repair snow, number 43, repair snow plow, that was done this time. Reappoint town attorney, allow town manager to spend money for the P&Z and senior center budgets for Plan of Conservation Development Enterprise Corridor enhancements. And they're still not positive about that. The planning and zoning has to go over it and make sure that's how they want to spend the money. We'll know about that within the month or so. And then they have to fix some doors at the senior center. That's going to cost $7,000 or $8,000, and that permission was given. And then they allow use of the letterhead for the Special Olympics. That's basically what happened there. 4 or 5 this time, but in general, in the last couple months, I've been keeping track of this policy versus non-policy discussions, because we're only really supposed to be talking about policy at the selectman level, and the non-policy should be mainly what Bruce Gesick is involved in, and all that, although he does overlap a bit on it. He helps with the policy too, of course. So we're up to 8 policy this week, 3 non-policy. I left out the informational ones, and then 45 altogether policy, 14. So it's about 2/3 a policy. So we still got a little way to go there. Now, as far as business-like is concerned, we had one little rocky one, not this meeting this week, but the one before, but we still gave it a business-like, because the reason I gave it a business-like, because there was no finger-pointing and no real acrimony. It was discussion. It was a long discussion. It was a tough discussion, but discussion is allowed, and that's okay. But when it gets out of control, then I call it non-business-like. But this week was an excellent meeting from a business-like. If all meetings could be like this week's meeting, and you can see a rerun of it on Saturday morning. I think it's either channel 13 or 15. Try both of them. I don't know, about 9, somewhere around 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. You'll be able to see a rerun of that. And it's a model for you to see how much we've improved and how much better we get along together. Now I'm going to talk a bit about the POCD, the Plan of Conservation and Development, the big breakthrough we had here and over the last month or so. We have a 20-year plan now for the Plan of Conservation and Development for the town, for Winchester. It's been in place for, we've had it for 13 years. It's been in place for. An update is required by the state statutes every 10 years. And we're late on that. We're 3 years late due to lack of funding over the years. For one reason or another, people went forward, Tony Canavo and the existing people, planning and zoning people, and they tried to get money, and they never got enough for this. So they've now decided to take more of an evolutionary approach, and this week they were given some funding by the Board of Selectmen. The vote was 5-1-1, 5 in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstained, to recognize the importance of the requirement and have agreed to fund the first stage of the evolution of the plan in stages over the next few years. So we made a lot of progress there. Now, really be thankful for that, because if we can get that done, it means some short-term revenue, most likely, for people who want to go down the corridor. It's hard to go down the corridor from Winston to Torrington now, because we don't have the water and sewer in place, and until we do, not many people want to move in there. It's hard because we have some swampy area and some granite area, and you can't really use wells everywhere because of restrictions for sprinkling systems and things like that. So we need to get the water and sewer down there if we're going to have expand in that area. Even if the development doesn't come, we still need the sewer and water down there one way or the other. So I just wanted to show you a quick little picture of what the Enterprise Corridor is. I made a mistake last week I want to correct. If people go into the Enterprise Corridor, which goes from Colebrook Town Line for about 6.5 miles or so, that's a rough estimate, down to the Torrington Town Line, crosses over the Main Street here in Winston. And this is the part we're interested in right here. I got it in red on here. I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's what we're interested in, laying the pipe, the water pipe and sewer. The sewer pipe stops at the bridge there, right somewhere in the neighborhood of the restaurants and all, right there at the beginning of that road. And the sewer ends right there. The water goes down to the Public Works and ends right there. But we want to get them both all the way down to the Torrington town line for our own reasons and for developers' reasons, and we need to move there. So that's a rough idea of what the corridor is. And when we give people the tax abatements to go into the corridor, we get reimbursed by the state for that. I don't want to go into all the detail here. I don't even know it all myself, but basically it's good. So that's moving along. They did vote for that. The selectmen voted to spend the money from the existing budget. Hopefully the money will be used to update the enterprise corridor portion of the plan, if the planning and zoning people agree that over the next X weeks. This will take a few months or not more. But once the work begins on this plan, POCD plan, an update letter can be sent by the Board of Selectmen to the Department of the Environment. This letter should allow the Department of Environment and the Army Corps of Engineers to continue processing the permits for Highland Ridge Estates and Country Club, and hopefully for Aurora Estates, should they get approved by all the town land use boards that it's had applied to in the last few weeks. So things are happening there. The Army Corps of Engineers and Department of Environment, they may approve the applications for Highland Ridge and all with or without conditions, or send the application back for rework. So, you know, we're nowhere near at the end of the tunnel yet, but we can see some light. And then when they're happy and you have to go through all these iterations, might have to go back to, might have to go back to planning and zoning, I don't know, but then the permits will or won't be granted. So we'll know. Then the developer needs 2 months to begin work once the permits are granted. Now I'm going to go through some suggestions. I think I got about 20 minutes left. I'll try to squeeze them in. Suggestions on what I think could be improved in the last selectmen meeting from my experience. Doesn't mean any of these things will be changed. Doesn't mean the selectmen will agree with me. Doesn't mean they're the best thing to do. But there are suggestions to be considered, and if they help, great. If they don't, chuck them in the wastebasket. And we'll just continue, we'll move together. I don't have all the answers, the selectmen don't have all the answers, and all the other parties don't have all the answers. It's a combination of everybody's input that'll help. So I'm going to go over a few things. I already talked about the liaison reports. I got Bruce's picture up, and I do want to say that the town manager's in charge of the budget. When I saw the meeting the other night, I was really comfortable with him being in charge of this budget. And I think that we talked a bit too much about the details of this POCD and senior center stuff, and that we should have just said, look, Bruce, you're in charge of the budget. You think you've got enough money in there. You think you can handle it. And as long as you're following the rules, and we all talked about that at the meeting, then go ahead and do it. I don't think we should nitpick him. If somebody wants more information, they can always have a meeting with him in his office during the week. It's unnecessary to have as much talk, and that's where I think we wasted a lot of time. We could have been talking about more important issues or got on with our life. So I think we need to trust these people to do their jobs, and one of the things Tony Canavo is very big on is empower the town manager, trust the town manager, let him get on with the job, and then help him wherever he needs help. And that doesn't matter whether it's Bruce or any other town manager, but as long as we're on a town manager form of government, that's what we should be doing. And we don't have to be discussing ad nauseum in detail at the selectmen meeting bits and pieces of this thing. Let's let him get on with it. If a selectman doesn't understand, it's perhaps best not to disrupt the whole meeting. It is usually best to schedule an appointment with the appropriate party between meetings, whether it be another selectman or the town manager or whoever else, and in an effort for education, understanding, and clarification purposes. There is evidence during the meeting that one or two of the selectmen may not be doing their homework between the meetings. Now, I do understand that these selectmen are very busy people. They've got companies, they got, they run schools, they're very busy people. So I can understand that, but I do think that that's important. I even saw one selectman said pre-election didn't know whether they would have the time or not, time was a valuable commodity and they were very stretched. So it's tough when you're a selectman and you still got to keep up. And that's part of the responsibility. So one way or another, we got to try to help them do it. And what I would suggest, I went for the agenda last week and it was ready till it was 12 o'clock on Friday. Well, that's okay. It wasn't the secretary's fault or anything. That's just the cutoff time for people to get everything in. Well, perhaps it could help if the agenda is published a bit further in advance, a few days earlier than that. If everybody gets their input into her, she can get it out earlier, and then it give everybody else a chance to prepare for the next meeting. It's kind of hard if you get it on a Friday night, the agenda, to see anybody in town hall on Saturday and Sunday. So, and then Monday you're working. So, we got to maybe look at that a little bit. Last changes for urgent additions will continue to be necessary. It'll always be the odd last change, but we should give everybody an opportunity to really understand what's going to come up at the meeting so they can prepare properly. The facts are important. This meeting, I did notice, not everybody knew the facts. Some people did, some people didn't. And I always say that if you don't know the facts, a lot of these, especially the new businessmen who are used to dealing with facts at all times, they spend a lot of time during the week getting their facts and getting knowledge and going down there and talking to people and trying to get up to date and preparing for the next meeting. So I think everybody has to do that. And I think it's very imperative that we're all on the same page when we go into the meeting, so we spend a little time. But the interim town manager seems to be respected. I've turned a lot of feedback on the streets this week about, or people were very, very impressed with his, with what he's doing. He's gaining momentum. And I would say, please keep giving him and his managers the responsibility and authority to do their jobs, and then hold them accountable. Let's make sure they do their jobs. This will allow the town to run much more efficiently. Micromanaging is one of Tony Canavo's biggest enemies. He doesn't like to see micromanaging, and he doesn't like to micromanage. So when we see it, it's like nails on a blackboard to we businessmen. We don't like to see micromanaging. Let's not attempt to micromanage them, and we have in the past. We've always micromanaged. We still do it to a certain extent. I know this is hard. It's hard to change. I know that it's hard. A few of us are used to micromanaging, and we have done it in the past. And the practice is often promoted by the charter. The charter does have a little too much, in my opinion, forcing the selectmen to get involved in things that perhaps shouldn't be involved in. And this is one of the whole issues behind this town manager versus elected mayor issue, is how can we get to the point where we have one person in charge that has responsibility and accountability and authority to get this job done? And it's hard to run a company with 2 or 3 people. It's hard to run a family with 2 or 3 people being in charge, So we need to get that squared away. I don't know the answer. We're looking at it now, and everybody else is looking at it, and hopefully we can figure it out. But I can tell you, one way or another, somebody has to be in charge. And until things change, it needs to be the town manager, and he is going to be working with a bit of an albatross around his neck because the charter doesn't really give him all the strength that he needs to do his job in many ways. So, and if you want to see any of that, just go to the town meetings. My next program, I hope to give you a very objective view of the things that were said at the last meeting, absolute value of the things that were said at the last meeting. I won't mention any names, but I just want to bring up all the points that were discussed, and with no spin and no plus or minus added to them. The town manager position is extremely important. Please do not choose an academic when you pick the next town manager. Let's get a businessman to be the town manager. The degrees and all are nice, but what we really need is business experience. And if you get people who run a business and they have business experience and they also have academic experience, that's okay, not a problem. But let's try to get somebody. We really have a business to run here, and it's a difficult business to run. So let's make sure we get somebody strong like Bruce to come in here and help us. It's a big advantage having Bruce because we speak the same language. We don't always agree on everything. He doesn't agree on everything with me or the selectmen, nor do we with him, but we speak the same language and we can communicate and we feel comfortable talking to each other. As you can observe for yourself by watching one of the repeats of the January 7th selectmen meeting, the huge gulf between the business experience selectmen and the others is becoming very apparent. You can see that for yourself. I don't have to show it to you. You know all the things I've talked about over the weeks and months. You can see it for yourself. And it will continue to be more pronounced as time goes by. Because if you have certain people getting into the detail and getting the facts and doing their homework, not saying the other people aren't trying to do that, but it's the background that's the important thing, and it's the way of operating and the experience. So not denigrating anyone, it's just saying that facts are facts, and we all got to work together, and we got to get to the point where we can communicate with people no matter what our backgrounds are, and we got to make sure that we get to the point where we have more unanimous decisions and less 5-to-1, 5-to-2 type of things. Preferably pick somebody for the town manager that has successfully run their own business as the present interim town manager has done. Even if we get another interim one, we still need a businessman. The POCD and ADA decisions were excellent. I can't thank you more for those decisions, and for the planning and zoning people for being so cooperative and everybody working together so well. But the discussions at the selectmen meeting and explanations were far too detailed and far too long, and due to a lack of preparation by one or two of the selectmen. And all that should be done outside of the selectmen meeting, and people should understand what these issues are and be prepared when they come to the selectmen meeting. Trusting the town manager and his staff for these budgetary decisions would continue to empower these town managers. Be the best for everyone and save a lot of time and aggravation. Being a selectman will be very time-consuming and demanding if the town management is not utilized properly. See, we know that the selectmen are very busy. We know they have jobs in their own careers. So we got to get to the point where the town manager runs the business 95% of the time without any interference and without any micromanagement. And if that happens, then the selectmen will have plenty of time for the policy decisions, plenty of time for the ceremonial things they have, plenty of time to attend all the meetings around town, or even just have meetings with the individual employees, which they do all the time, and plenty of time to talk to the subcontractors, plenty of time to talk to the people down in the state area. We need to free the selectmen up to do what they have to do, and we need to let the town manager do what he has to do. And I'm really belaboring this because that's the secret to success. That's the key to success, and that's the holy grail as far as we're concerned here. We really got to get that down, and we got to practice it just like you do anything else in your life until we get it right. And I feel that we're making a lot of progress. We're going in the right direction, and we got to go even faster in that particular area. Now, trust, we talked a lot about trust here, and how important it is in running a business, and that you have to trust and verify, but trust the town manager and his managers and let them get on with it. Obtain your education outside of the meeting the way that it's used to be done is not often proven to be the best way. So if we keep, every time somebody comes up with an idea, we say, well, we used to do it a different way. I've heard that all over the world from everybody whenever I went into a troubleshooting situation. Well, here's how we used to do it. And then I say, yeah, but the way we used to do it didn't work. That's why we're in the pickle we're in, because the way we used to do it didn't work. The people in the town are not happy with the way we used to do it. That's why they elected a new slate of selectmen to come in and try to correct that. Now, the easiest things to see in the correction are the meetings themselves and how well they're run now, and professional, and everybody's very impressed with that. Wherever I go in town, people mention that, and that is easy to see. It's a little harder to see some of the other things, like breaking through on the enterprise corridor bottleneck and things like that, and the POCD, giving help to the planning and zoning that they've been looking for so many years. And that's partly because these selectmen recognized that they needed the help, and they made an attempt to get them the money. Now it's not as money as they perhaps need, and they could use more, but it's as much as we could afford at the particular time to get this thing moving in an evolutionary manner. And it's because of the experience and the knowledge that the people have to recognize that they need to do it, and to get that money parceled out, which hasn't been parceled out for 13 years. Probably didn't ask for it for the first 5 of those 13 years, but I'm sure they asked for it. Well, I think $5,000 is their budget this year, and has been for a while, and most of that goes to secretarial help for the meetings. And again, the secretary does a wonderful job there. So she's worth that, that's for sure. So let's try to do that. Now, say a bit about the town building, what they talked about too, was that when we talked, it was a very short discussion, and I thought a very appropriate discussion. We didn't have a presentation, we didn't have a lot of people come in and drag in the owner of the furniture company, but Bruce handled that, and he handled it very well. And my contribution to this is that I would like to see us, and I'm sure we will, and we are trying, but we do know that they're not in a blight situation over there. We've been told that by our town employees, and we're watching that very closely. But on the other hand, the lady is trying to sell the building. Now, if we have any contacts in the state, if we have any contacts in business, if we have any contacts anywhere, we should be trying to help the lady sell the place and try to get try to use our own expertise in the town, all our own personal business connections and everything else to try to help there. But on the other hand, I want to say that while we're doing that, I did talk to Bruce today or yesterday, I can't remember in the days anymore, but he did reemphasize to me, Brian, the real answer here is to have a business-friendly environment in the town. We need to develop our environment. We need to continue to do so. And I mentioned to him when I saw him that the press has been much, much better in the last few weeks for us. 3 or 4 weeks, we haven't had any backbiting in the press. We haven't had any finger pointing in the press. We've had pretty good press. We've had pretty good control by our selectmen and work together in that respect. And I think that's improving, and I hope it continues to improve. But I didn't like some of the things I saw in the Winston paper, but that's to be, that it doesn't all happen overnight. But we need to work there a little bit. But we must continue to expedite the transformation to being recognized by all as a business-friendly town that will attract employers and the expertise that we need to run their businesses. I mean, we can't just rely on what I call the quantum leap, the developments on the hill, because they may not happen for one of many, many reasons. So we need to keep trying to pursue that opportunity and try to make it happen. A lot of it's not under our control, but we need to work on that. But we also need to work on getting the enterprise corridor in and getting more businesses down there that'll pay taxes and employ people and do the same in other areas of the town. In order to do that, Bruce has re-emphasized to me that we really need to have a business-friendly environment, and he's happy that we're working towards that, and that people will come when we're seen by all to have that, okay? So now, another point I want to make, because I am getting close to the end here, is that we are going to have a presentation at the next selectman meeting, and I'm pretty sure they know why they're doing it and that they want that selection to have that happen. So good luck to them in that. When I watch the tape of the selectman meeting, I'll probably skip through that presentation, but my view is that the presentation be given at the planning and zoning level or to the town manager. And if you don't do that in a bureaucracy, and we are a small bureaucracy, we're not a large bureaucracy like the federal government, we're not an intermediate bureaucracy like the state, we're a small bureaucracy struggling to become less and less of a small bureaucracy, more and more like a business in our running of the town business. But delegating non-essential presentations to the town manager and his team is absolutely essential. We need to delegate to the right people, and we need to back them, and we need to help them. And having non-essential presentations at the highest level undermines the authority of the day-to-day managers, because we don't want to undermine their authority. We want to back them. We want them to be in charge. We want them to make the decisions. We want them to have the presentations, and then only come up to the selectman level where it's necessary. And if we're not careful, we'll have all kinds of people wanting to make presentations at the selectman level. And all we really want at the selectman level are the real essential bottom line from the town manager. He can attend the presentations. When he thinks one's critical and necessary for the selectmen, then he should do that. No argument. But we can't have everybody in town calling the mayor or anybody saying they want to give a presentation. We got to get, we got to control that a little better. So good luck with the next presentation, but let's try to let Bruce do the presentations in the future, get the presentations, or his direct managers. And then I'm sure Bruce doesn't want every presentation in the world either, so he's going to delegate that. So and that's what we're trying to achieve here. And Tony Canavo would be happy, I'm sure, if there were more delegation and more of that kind of thing. So it's just the opposite of what we want to do. We don't want to encourage that people going around the managers. The coming meeting between the joint Board of Education and the selectmen should prove to be a very interesting meeting. Again, the Board of Education has a very difficult job. They're caught in the middle here. They've got a tough union situation. They've got good employees that do want to be paid fair wages. They have restrictions put them on by state statutes, by demands of the federal government and the state government. They've got a poor town to work in that doesn't we're not rich. We don't have the money to ladle out all the time. So, they're in a tough position, and we all recognize that. So there'll be a meeting between the selectmen and the Board of Education in the next few weeks. You should take an interest in that. Also, we still got the schools. I don't talk much about Pearson here because there is another show. Jay Case talks about those kind of things on his show because he's the chairman of that committee. So I don't really get into that much here. If it looks like it's getting off the rails or something like that. But I'm sure the Board of Education is interested in how they're going to, what's the plan to do these fixes to the schools over the years, and that'll be discussed, and also to fund the same sort of things. Now, the only thing I hope that happens at that meeting is that there aren't any tears. It's a tough situation, and people do get emotional about these things. But let's keep our heads, let's have a business-like meeting, and let's all work together to get the revenue into town, which is really the problem here. And then once the revenue starts coming in and we're all have a business-friendly environment and we're working together, then we'll all be able to concentrate on the more positive things like helping the Torp Museum get off the ground, helping the Wall of America get off the ground. I'm going to a meeting there next Monday to hear one of their presentations at Planning and Zoning. Very positive about those kind of activities, and there's plenty of things going on in town where we can more constructively use our time, and we will achieve that balance sooner or later. So with that, I thank you very much. Next week we'll talk more about the Charter Commission and some of the issues being discussed there, and thank you very much. Bye. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we we shall overcome. Hello, everybody. This is Brian O'Haron. Welcome to the 18th of January edition of Planning for Success. You heard a little bit of We Shall Overcome there. I haven't sang that in about 50 years, and it shows. But I wanted to do that today because on Monday we have Martin Luther King Day. I have three pictures up for you, and one of them is John Brown from Torrington, Connecticut, who later moved to Kansas and was called Osawatomie John Brown, and was an abolitionist. There is a mural down in the Torrington post office. John Brown is a little controversial. They do have honor him in Torrington. He's on the side of all the trucks, and they have a big mural there. And he was very, very well known, of course. And at the end of the show, as you know, I played John Brown's body in honor of my great-grandfather. Great-great-grandfather. There's also, see there, of course, John Brown, he wasn't afraid to reach for a gun, and many of his sons got killed in his battles down there, and I did go visit there with my wife when we were down living in D.C. towards the turn of the century here, helping out the IRS, and we saw the John Brown pictures, and they have a whole show down there about John Brown, which I always thought would be good to move up to Torrington. His house did burn down in Torrington. It doesn't exist anymore. It's up by the Yukon branch up there. The next person that's on there is not so violent a person, Mahatma Gandhi. And Gandhi was very big in my days, very, very, very well known for his pacifist approach to things and for turning the other cheek. And then, of course, one of the men who learned a lot from him was Martin Luther King, and he always did mention Gandhi. I did meet Martin Luther King when I was in college, and I was involved in the civil rights movement in the late 50s, early 60s. I went to Kansas City to hear him speak at one of the Baptist churches, and I did tell him that I was from Torrington and where John Brown was from, and we had quite a little discussion. When Joyce and I were living in Rome, a few years later, we got the news that he was assassinated, and very, very sad to hear that, of course. The song itself was written by Charles Tinley as I'll Overcome Someday, an old gospel song, and then it was changed by Guy and Candy Carolan. They merged a few other gospel songs in with it, changed the words, and then finally Pete Seeger and one or two of his friends changed it from I Will Overcome to I Shall Overcome. So that's kind of the history of that song. We all like the approach that Gandhi at least took, and Martin Luther King, and we're very proud of them. And it's kind of in line with what I'm trying to do here in Winston. I'm trying to get people to take more of a pacifist type approach to things, work together, talk to each other, and resolve their problems by turning the other cheek and maybe sitting in once in a while and not zinging each other. So I've thought it'd be kind of appropriate to do that tonight. And now I'm going to talk a bit about another thing. On Monday night, I went to the Planning and Zoning meeting, and I was really, really impressed because this going right now is going to be a tribute to there's going to be a wall in this town that's being done down at 100 Whiting Street, Whiting Mills Complex, which used to be the old Winston Hosier Company, and it's called a tribute. It's a tribute to the working class. I went to the Planning and Zoning meeting, and I saw the presentation. It's called the American Mural Project. It's also known as the Wall of America. This endeavor on the Still River along the planned 5-mile greenway will be very positive for our community. I'm sure you've heard about this before. Not only our community, but the USA, and via the internet, the world. There'll be worldwide access to the database there, and there's all kinds of interesting things going to happen that, I can't go into detail tonight. It would take the whole show. But anyway, it's going to be very good publicity for Winston and for the town, and you're going to really like it. So I think we're going to switch now to the picture of the people there, and while I can continue to talk about it. 6 people from Winston are on the 20-person board of directors of this endeavor that meets in New York City and has supporter, participants, and contributors from around the United States. The initial buildings were donated by the artist Ellen Giesendick's family. She lives in Sharon, and they bought the buildings and somehow raised $1.5 million from private parties. Some donated from local citizens and organizations to date. With another $1.5 million expected over time, they expect to raise even more money in the future. There's about a $3 million deal now to get these buildings in shape for this wall. It was very informative, and the meeting was very informative, and the applications will be presented to Inland Wetlands and Planning and Zoning in a month or so for approvals to proceed with various construction activities. The project will be done in stages, and the artist hopes to be in her cherry picker. She goes up in a cherry picker because this thing's going to be 5 stories high, and when she paints. She sometimes crawls out on steel structures to watch her husband work on construction of large skyscrapers. So she's quite an interesting lady. And she goes on a cherry picker, and then that will be used for assembling and painting on the three-dimensional mural, parts of which are already stored in various places, in a year or so. So in a year or so, Ellen hopes to be in the building working on the mural here. It is already being developed all over the United States by a lot of people. The first stage will be to add 2 stories to the existing building, as the mural, done in sections eventually by the children from all 50 states, will be the size of a football field, or for those who've been to Greece, the Parthenon, in length and width when complete. Ramps will be designed into the architecture to allow visitors to climb high for a better view of the mural. As many as 10,000 people, many of them children, have been working on this project that will honor our city's past, bringing thousands of visitors annually. That's very, very, very encouraging and very positive. Ellen Giesendick, the artist, has many years' experience as a photographer and illustrator for such magazines as Sports Illustrated, People Magazine, and Road and Track. She's also designed labels for the Newman's Own brand. This project was her brainchild in 1998. She's been working on it now for 10 years. The artist from Sharon is the entrepreneur of this endeavor and is a bundle of energy and very positive. She sets an excellent example for the town to follow. Now, she's an artist, but she's also a business person and an entrepreneur. And she and I think a lot alike. It reminds me of the days when I was raising money for the venture capitalists around the world. And she's very positive, and she's going to do us a lot of good. She's an artist, but also a business person who knows how to network and how to make what other people think is impossible happen. Another asset is the addition of Barbara DeBellis-Noggle as the development director for this project. Barbara, you may remember her as the driving force behind the Friends of Main Street organization when a lot of progress was made in this town in the center of town. So if any of you are interested in this project, just get a hold of them down there at Whiting Street and go down there, and you can see all kinds of pictures and what's happening. So with that, I'd like now to switch to the agenda. And when the camera goes on, you will see a picture of Ellen up on top of, here she is, up on top of a big ladder, up a few stories in a building, painting this wall of America. So, by the way, a lot of spent now not painting, but chasing money around the country and organizing donations and getting permits and organizing all the people that are doing the mural. I mean, it's a very, very busy endeavor. All right, so for tonight, the agenda, I will have the picture of the Wall of America program that was taken down in New York City where they had, in one of the museums, they had a showing down there, and they had kids there. You'll see them sitting on the floor, and Ellen's there, and you'll see a small mock-up of the wall. And I'll leave that up throughout the whole program in back of me. I'm sure it'll be there. Okay, so with the agenda tonight, we're going to have comments, which I made most of already, financial update, notices, suggestions from the Charter Revision Commission public hearing, suggested priorities for dealing with the elected mayor request. I'm going to be, you saw my disclaimer on it. Anything I say tonight about the Charter Revision Committee is not official. It's not got to do with anybody else on the commission except myself for my own personal statements, and there's going to be plenty of them tonight, so have a listen. And I will present all this information to the public hearing probably in a few days, or at least by the next meeting, which is on January 22nd. I think it's 6 or 6:30 it starts. 6:30 it starts. So I'm going to have some suggested priorities for dealing with the elected mayor request from the selectmen. I'm going to have some suggested pros and cons of mayor versus town manager that I put together, nobody else. And you can blame me if you don't like what you see. And number 7 is comparison of Winston and Torrington leadership history. It's just a straw man. All these are straw men to be dealt with when I submit them to the commission. They'll be dealt with by everybody, and some of them won't be agreed to. Some of them, won't even be considered probably, and some of them will. And we'll, one way or another, we'll update those. So now I'm going to go on. I'm going to move kind of quick tonight because I do have a lot of subject matter. I'm going to move to the financial update. And the first thing I want to point out is there's been a lot of confusion about the spending freeze that's going on in town right now. And people have asked me, Brian, what's this spending freeze? What do we need to do about that? Why are they still spending money when we have a spending freeze? So what I thought I would do is explain it to you this evening, how spending freezes usually work. I mean, you can have any kind of spending freeze, but remember when they put on the spending freeze, they said that it would accept any contracts or any commitments we had with vendors or, union contracts and things like that. You can't just stop those. Once you have an agreement, you have to keep going. So what it is the spending freeze has been imposed by the Board of Selectmen. The Selectmen can authorize exceptions deemed necessary along the way. When there are things that they think are very important, or maybe even an emergency, which we don't have right now, but if we should have one, they can authorize exceptions to what's deemed necessary along the way. So that's part of it. They put on the freeze, they can authorize exceptions. A spending freeze is a guideline. It's there are many things that cannot and should not be frozen. As I mentioned, contracts are purposely excluded in agreements with that are contracts really. A spending freeze is a message to be careful. Please be careful. We think we're going to be pretty tight on our budget this year, so if all you managers can be extremely careful, we selectmen would appreciate that. And they do mean business there. I'm not trying to make light of it, but there will be exceptions between now and the end of the year where they deem necessary. The ADA issue is one of the exceptions they made, and the ADA, the doors at the senior center, are very important and have serious repercussions if not attended to in a responsible manner by the selectmen. That's the kind of thing we don't want to fool with. We want to get them fixed so they don't stay on for 15 years like other things have in the past. The plan of conservation and development also has serious repercussions. If we don't get that squared away pretty quick, then we could get from the state, if we don't resolve them in a timely manner, we could maybe not get some grants from the state. And there are some things, that don't make it palatable not to be up to date with the state. So once we get started, then we'll be back in the good graces, we hope, The selectmen will write their letter, we'll get back in the good graces of the state, and we'll be off the hook on that. And so they did make a decision to spend some of the existing budget money on that. In addition, other important issues and/or emergencies may need attention before the end of the year. The town manager has a difficult job on his hands, we all know that with the budget, and may have to ask for policy or priority decisions over the next few months. He and his managers have to make the spending freeze work, asking for exceptions when necessary. If you would like further clarification on any decision made by the town manager or the Board of Selectmen, try contacting the town manager for an explanation at the town hall. Now I would like to talk a bit about the budget, quickly. I just want to point out this is a slide I've used in the past, nothing new here. This is a slide that, on average, we have had 3.93% tax increase. I'm doing a comparison of Torrington and Winston now for my own purposes, and I find out that if we go back a few more years, past 10 years back, we're probably at 5.3 average over the last, say, 12 or 14 years. So I don't have all the facts there yet, but when I do, I'll show them to you. So 3.93%. Inflation is about 3.5%. There was just a thing on TV the other day that said last month's inflation was, I think it was last month, was 4.25 or something like that. So now that's might not be for the whole year this year, but it is for at least a month, and that's a warning to people. This doesn't leave much room for town further needs, improvements and matching funds for grants, etc. Therefore, we need to look very carefully at priorities and priority trade-offs across the town functions for more money that we do spend. Remember, at the present mill rate, 34.27, a mill is worth $588,080, or 2.92%. So with an average tax increase of 3.93% to basically meet inflation, and another mill will say, for improvements, we could have a potential tax increase of, say, 5.92%. May not happen. They might find ways to conserve money. They might need more money. But, this is kind of the area we're in. So I don't think anybody can expect a zero tax increase this year. There's work to be done, and I don't know, maybe we'll get one, but it looks kind of unlikely. This may be that's just Brian's opinion, by the way. I have no inside information on this. This is just my opinion. This may be pretty hefty for our town to get through a referendum. So there's going to be an interesting few months ahead. So that's why I keep trying to make you aware of where we stand at this particular time. The upwards pressure on the next budget for 2008 or 2009 is the debt carryover from last year, $428,765. And then the town increase would probably be, say, 3%. That's $588,080. That's and then a Newfield Road is $57,400, unless we can find another way to pay for that. So we're up to $1,074,245. 1.83 mils, or 5.33% upwards pressure. And don't forget those of the Winchester that are going to get a hefty, perhaps, increase in their from the reval. Some people won't get any. Some people will gain a little, and some people will get a large increase or some kind of an increase. We'll know more about that in the future. We don't know right now. Notices, most revaluation appeal results are being mailed soon. So remember, we went through that process where everybody went in and that wanted to and contested their reval results, and the vision appraisal looked them all over, and the results of that look over are going to be mailed out within days, if not within a week or so. So that's that. Now, vision appraisal is still reviewing the water access appeals at the lakes. There were a lot of pushback from people about water access at the lakes and why were they valued so high. So that's being relooked at, and that should be finished soon. When that is, then decisions will be made, and I guess information will be mailed out about that. The preliminary mill rate estimate will be available around March 15th, as I said many times in the past, 2008, because it has to by charter, when the town manager presents his budget to the Board of Selectmen, which he has to do by March 15th, 2008. He has to do that by charter, and with that will be the first initial, but not final, mill rate calculation. The final mill rate calculation will be fixed once the budget is approved at the town referendum. Now, people have asked me, Brian, what happens if we don't get the budget approved by July when the tax bills go out? And from what I'm told, and unless I misunderstood, the July tax bills will be based upon the new assessments and the new mill rate, if it's approved or not approved. If it's not approved, it'll still be based on the new assessments and the new mill rate done by the finance director, so the bills can go out pretty close to what they're going to be when we have the final mill rate. And then this is only true, by the way, we will only have to do that if we didn't have the budget approved. If the budget's approved, we'll know what that'll be the final mill rate and a final assessment. So we'll be happy with that. The final assessments will be known much before that. It's the mill rate that's important. Tax benefits for the elderly applications will be accepted between February 1 and May 15th, down in the assessor's office in the town hall. And I think they're going to make an effort to put something on television or get something out to everybody, all the elderly people, so they know what's available and what applications they need to fill out, and can get it done between February 1st and May 15th. Try not to go there before February 1st because they're pretty busy down there with all this reval and tax stuff, and they can't really do much for you until February 1. But try to get there as quickly after February 1 as you can. And I will be reminding you about this from week to week as long as I'm on the air here. Applications can be obtained from the assessor's office in Town Hall between those dates. The Enterprise Corridor. Plan and metrics will be presenting at the next selectman meeting, and I hope I didn't make a mistake here, but I think it's January 22nd, 2008, and probably about 7 o'clock or so. So if you want to see anything about that, you will watch it on television or go down to the meeting, and that's going to be talking by some consultants to the planning and zoning about what they have to offer in the way of this replanning. I'm not totally sure exactly what it's about. I'll have to wait to see what happens, but that'll be at the next selectman meeting. Planning is proceeding between the town and the developer for water and sewer down the corridor that I presented to you last week, showed you the picture of from the town down to Torrington Line, from the present terminations to the Torrington Town Line. And then Wetlands has reviewed the Aurora Estates just on Wednesday night, and resubmission for the Aurora Estates, and have asked for a review by the town's consulting engineers. So that's moving along, and that should happen. Okay, now we're going to get to the point where I'm talking about something from the Charter Revision Committee. And first, I'm once again going to put up the disclaimer that you saw when it first came on, and when we first came on, and we'll be on every week, the disclaimer, and I'll read it to you just so there's no confusion here. Until further notice, Brian O'Haron is a member of the Town of Winchester Charter Revision Commission. That could go on for months or years, and nobody knows how long that'll go on. Any statements made on this program, Planning for Success, referring to the Commission's activities or the town charter are his own personal statements, my own personal statements, and do not represent the views of the Charter Revision Commission. The meeting was held last week, and there will be minutes. They'll be probably presented at the next meeting, January 22nd. The meeting will start at 6:30 and go on there will be a time limit. I'm not sure exactly how long, but that'll probably be decided next week. We talked about a time limit at the last meeting, but we didn't make a final decision on that. And I know there'll be the meeting won't go on until 2 in the morning. I'm sure of that. So now you're welcome to speak in the first 15 or 20 minutes of it. I don't think they've picked any certain time frame, but after that, then you can listen for the rest of the meeting if you want to stay. Now, so that's the disclaimer. I hope everybody, I don't think I can make it any more clear than I have, so off we go. I'm going to submit a letter here in the next few days to the Charter Revision Committee, and I'm going to attach the things I'm going to be talking about tonight, plus some other things that I'm not going to be talking about tonight, and I'm going to get some information in there. But one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to have a draft list of keyword direction. When we had the public hearing, everybody made suggestions. So I've drafted up a list here of not their comments, but basically the points they were making. So I kind of took the absolute value of everything they said, boiled it down to the point they were making. Now, if anybody wants to read any of the comments they made, they can get it from the public record in the town hall in Winchester, Connecticut. So that will be there, and this is only meant as an aid in discussion. If there's any inaccuracies, I want to know about it so I can change them. And I'll update this thing, and you know, people may not want to discuss these in a meeting, and they may want to. It's totally up to them. So with that, I'll go through the first one set of things, and that is what I did. I just made a list of all the suggestions that were made at the meeting, and I'm going to go over them with you right now. The first was was pertaining to the Board of Selectmen. Somebody stood up and said, and you'll see that in the minutes, who said all this stuff and what they said. And you can actually go and listen. I have a tape, there's a disc rather, that's made at the night. It lasts about an hour. And I went and got a copy, and I listened to it. It's very audible, very clear. You can get one from the town clerk. And that's where I made sure that I had most of the issues down and that I didn't take any chance. And I try to word them as best I can. They won't be perfect, but they'll be pretty close. So the first is somebody suggested that we make the Board of Selectmen a 5-member board instead of a 7-member board. Number 2, have a finance committee separate from the Selectman Town Manager and the Town Council, composed of elected financial experts. This is somebody in the audience saying this, a public hearing. Leave term of office at 2 years. That's from the Winsted Taxpayer Association. Wherever you see WTA, that means Winsted Taxpayers Association. They sent a letter, and this comes from their letter. There's also a lot of verbiage in the letter that would take me half the program to go through and explain, so you'll have to go read that for yourself. But I've just taken what I consider the meat out of that letter, the things they want to do, and I'm pointing those out. Okay, town manager. There was a lot of sympathy for the town manager position there. Most of the people in the audience were in favor of that, as I said last week. So number 1, remove the residency requirement for the town manager. Somewhere down after this, you'll see a thing that says, don't remove the residency. So, you know, there's different views that show up in the meeting, but remove the residency requirement for the town manager. Number 2, provide the town manager a contract for a period of 3 years. Number 3, provide for options for periods after the initial contract with the town when the manager's contract expires, so that if the town wants to, they can have some options in the charter that allow them to extend it under certain circumstances. Number 4, provide for provisions of removal of the town manager so that he won't be just dismissed out of hand. That's what that's intended to do. Strengthen a town manager's position. Provide continuity, define dismissal terms. These are all for the charter, by the way. They may or may not make it into the charter, but this is what people want to see happen. Dismissal should only be for wrongdoing of some sort. Several people mentioned that. Matter of fact, several people mentioned a lot of these, but I'm only putting them once on the list because we don't need repetition on that. Next, number 9, the burden of proof when we do seek the dismissal of a town manager should be on those seeking the dismissal. They're responsible for the burden of proof. Wrongdoing should be proven in public. Number 10. Number 11, any decision ratified by a public referendum should be ratified by a public referendum. So if we decide to let a town manager go, somebody in the audience said, let's make sure it gets ratified by a public referendum and make sure that the public votes on that. Number 12, remove serving at the pleasure. Right now we have a lot of, like the town manager serves at the pleasure of the selectmen. They want to remove that from the charter. 13, include a process for hiring the town manager. Exactly what is the procedure and process for hiring a town manager. The next thing that came up was number 14. One person said we should change the he's to he's and she's and bring it up to modern sort of parlance. Next one, I don't quite understand the next one. I got to re-look at that one again. I listened to the tape, I still couldn't understand it. There was something about dollar amounts in there. I got to check on that. Number 16, include professional and educational qualifications in the charter itself for the town when you hire a town manager. 17, provide a contract for 2 years expiring in off-election years. That allows for overlap between the election of the selectmen and the appointment of a new town manager. So if a new selectmen get elected, then they have to wait a year before the town manager's contract expires, and that gives them a chance to get to know that kind of thing. Okay. Next one is 18, keep the residency requirement, and that comes a strong recommendation from the Winston Taxpayer Association. And they have probably, I don't know, 300 or 400 members, and they're from all parties. So, they carry some weight in the community. By the way, just because the Winston Taxpayer Association sends us a recommendation signed by their leaders doesn't mean everybody in their group agrees with everything. But basically, that's our official letter, and we have to take it seriously. Next is the financials. Update the bidding threshold in a town from $3,000 to $10,000. That's a request made by somebody from the audience in writing, actually. Okay, the next one is Energy Commission. One person wants to set up, the charter should require an Energy Commission for the town. Next is boards and commissions. The method of selecting members to town-appointed boards and committees should be identical for all. According to one person in the hearing. The process should be reinforced. The same person said that the process should be reinforced by our elected officials. So that's number 2, change the inland wetland and water courses and planning and zoning to elected seats. Number 3, provide a town engineer for inland wetlands and planning and zoning to work with regularly. That's come up often in the past, I hear. Right now, we kind of use outside consultants for engineering, and somebody's suggestion we hire our own, which of course is not inexpensive, but it does require work to support it. But that'll be considered by this commission. Public Works. Somebody was there, and they said strongly that we have some outdated wording in there about public works and the selectmen relationship, and we should probably change that. Number 1, change the wording of Section 703, eliminating necessity for requests from the Board of Education. I'm sorry. This one here, number 1, is to change some wording in the charter, so that the Public Works could do the maintenance on the schools and the Board of Education. There's some wording in there that says they can do the work, but then they would have to ask for the money from the schools, and one person got up and said they wanted that eliminated so that Public Works could do the maintenance and not have to go to the schools for money, but have it in their own budget. Next is G, is the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission, somebody said we should include that in the charter. It's not in there right now, and that was brought up. Next is Water and Sewer Commission. There was some changes that need to be needed in there for hydrants, who takes care of those, and all that kind of thing. So there was some basic stuff in there about that. Then there was something about the charter itself from the Winston Taxpayer Association, which says, do not change anything in the charter. They would just assume we left the charter the way it is and we didn't change anything. And they consider it, from at least one note I read, to be okay the way it is. And that says so very clearly in their letter. Now, the town meeting. The Winston Taxpayer Association says, do not change the town meeting. In their letter, they have reasoning for that. You should read their letter, get a copy from the public record, and have a read of that. Town referendum. Winston Taxpayer Association, do not change the town referendum. And that's the WTA stands for Winchester Taxpayers Association, unless I made a mistake. Sometimes I get mixed up between my Winstons and my Winchesters, but I think they're the Winchester Taxpayer Association. Now, the next thing I'm going to put up is another thing that's purely mine, purely my view. I will be submitting it to the Charter Commission in a few days, but it's a draft attempt at prioritizing these things I just told you about. You know, when I was talking about how to run a meeting, I said you should do most of the work outside of the meeting and have a short meeting. So I've done a lot of work this year. I probably spent 2 days or 3 days working, preparing for our next Charter Revision Committee meeting. I imagine the other commissioners have done the same thing. So, and they'll have things to say too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit a draft of what I consider to be the priorities for discussion from meeting to meeting. To this, I have added some requests of my own, and you'll see a BOH next to those. I have not submitted them yet, but I will in a few days. There are things I have talked about on this program before, in one way or another. They're submitted to the public record and for consideration. Again, there's no poetic license here. If somebody when we discuss them on the commission, anything's fair game. If somebody doesn't agree with them, they can say so. If they want to change words, priorities, this is just a straw man to get the pump primed and get things moving and try to save time, so we don't have to do it all at the meeting. Or what we can do at the meeting is a lot shorter. Now, all this information, of course, will be available in the public record. Because when it goes into public hearing, everybody can get a copy of it, and it'll be presented there. So I'll probably send it in by mail as requested to the mayor's office, and then I'll bring some copies at the meeting just in case somebody didn't get any. But that's what's going to happen. So this is an icebreaker. It's something to get people thinking about that may never happen. But since we were asked by the Charter Revision Commission to consider, the word consider is very important, a mayoral form of government rather than this town manager approach we have now, selectman town manager approach. What I feel we should do is address that first, because that's the most important thing that they want considered. So they also want us to look at other things and see if we want to consider anything else, and that's why everybody was at the public hearing to get their 2 cents in. So the first thing I want to say to you is, the first thing I think we have to do is consider the mayoral form of government as a commission. And that should be first in our priority. We wouldn't want to say, let's look at changing dollar limits first. That's probably not the first priority. So I put things in priority here. They're not a law. They're not the gospel. They can be changed by anybody and everybody, and they can be commented upon. But there's something to get the pot boiling a little here and try to speed this up. I really don't want to be a member of this commission for a year. I got other things I want to do. I'm not so sure about the other people, but I know that I'd like to see it move on. So number one, the majority of the selectmen requested, not all the selectmen, they made it very clear at the public hearing, 5 out of 7 selected that we look at this and consider an elected mayor. So they wanted us to consider an elected mayor. And I've added in here that maybe it should be a small town council. If we do have an elected mayor, that's something everybody has to discuss, maybe 2 to 4 people, not 10 to 20. Or something like that, and a small financial committee. One person in the meeting did say that we probably, if we have a mayoral approach, we should have a financial committee, and I kind of agree with that. Small one, 2 to 3. Other people do that. So that's something to consider. Number 2, longer terms overlap for town council and finance committee. And that's something that I put in there because, and I'm going to put it in publicly, but I think we ought to consider overlapping terms in some cases. It'll probably never happen, and maybe nobody will agree with me, but I think we ought to do that because that allows for continuity. And you notice in the Board of Education, they have X number, far too many, I think, people on the board, but some of them were elected this year and some in 2 more years, and some are for 4 years, and they overlap with other people that have been there already 2 years. So there's already a precedent for that, and we could do some of that overlapping if we choose to do so. That's up to the commission. The next is all major committee chairmen be elected. That's the 3rd priority that I put on the list, out of that list. I mean, we shouldn't consider that until we finish with the mayor stuff. Next one is priority number 4, reducing, if legal, inland wetland and Board of Education seats to 5. May not be legal. A lot of people tell me, but we got 3 lawyers on this board, plus we have a town attorney and Uncle Tom Cobley and all. So we should be able to find out what is legal and what isn't legal, and then debate whether or not we want to change the numbers at all. I may be we may not be able. There might be state statute which says these must be 9, there must be 9, or whatever. So state statute will always win out in the end. Next is enable the town to maintain the town-owned school buildings. That was requested at the meeting. I put that down as the 5th priority. See Article 7, Section 703A. That's where they want the wording changed. Number 6, eliminate spending overlaps between schools and town where allowed. I want to talk a bit about that. I put that on, you'll see my initials BOH on there, because eliminating the spending overlaps between schools and towns where allowed could help us in our budget. As a matter of fact, in my green papers, I wrote a whole page on that. Now, it's not easy to do that. States might not let us do it. Again, we need a legal interpretation first, and if we can't do anything, then that's the end of that. That's dead. But if we can do something, we should consider it. There's no sense everybody having a purchasing department. There's no sense everybody having a different set of legal aspects, except, of course, when they're needed for specialties. There's no sense in having multiple computer systems. It doesn't make much sense to me. Now, it may be needed, and maybe we have to keep them, but it's something I think that we should consider, so I'm going to put that in as a request to consider it. Number 7, and I know that's tough ground there, because a lot of state statutes involved. You know, our hands are tied in a lot of cases. I'm not naive here. I've been talking about this for years, so I have a pretty good idea, but I'd like to get it formalized once and for all, so I don't have to talk about it anymore. Number 7, add revenue and budget projections to the statute-required existing 5-year capital financial planning. This is one of mine that I mentioned in previous programs. Right now, we're required by state statute to do a capital plan for the next 5 years. A rough plan, objectives more than anything else. Where we do know the proper information, we have to have it there. Where we don't know the proper, we probably have to do estimates or something. So what I'd like to see is revenue and budget projections added there too, so we can plan our future and then we can manage accordingly. And we certainly, revenue is one of our biggest problems, so, and the budget too. So we need to have an idea where we're going over the next 5 years and follow it. So this is Brian's opinion, not the rest of the commission. They may not agree with me. We may never get anywhere on it. Statutes might not let it happen. I don't know, but we'll give it a try. Number 8, enable guidelines for inland wetlands and ZBA where legal. I was in a commission for almost 1.5 years where we try to get guidelines into the inland wetland, one of the sections in their rules, and it all got erased at the end, and we wasted 1.5 years fooling with it. So I still think it's important. And in order to manage 95% of the time by the town managers, you've got to give them some guidelines. We may not get these guidelines, but I'm going to ask for them, and then I won't be surprised if we don't get them. So, but I will try my best. Okay, the next is raise approval and competitive bidding limits. I just made some suggestions here. If it's $3,000 now, make it $5,000. This kind of goes with inflation. These numbers were good when they were put in the charter. Maybe they need to be changed. And I know it would make it easier to run as a business. Remember now, one of the reasons I'm involved in this charter commission is because I'm trying to get the charter to allow us to run as much like a business as practical. I'm going to be in there trying to ask for things that allow us to run. Now, I didn't ask for this, somebody else did, but if they didn't, I would have asked for it. So we need to try to get these limits up. And the mayor, for example, in Torrington, he has a $100,000 limit. Our guy has a $15,000 limit. So there's quite a bit of a difference there. Now, as I understand it, okay, number 8, resolve falsehoods and inaccuracies. And there's poor wording in the charter that was pointed out by people, the water and sewer stuff. There's a whole bunch of comments coming in that the selectmen asked the attorney to look at it and eliminate redundancies and things that weren't true anymore in there, and inaccuracies and things like that. Somebody asked for emergency bid waiving, so I put that in this pot as well. And then the he's and she's are in here in priority number 8. No reason not to change those if everybody thinks it's something we want to see. One thing that probably should go in there, although it's a hot potato to talk about it, is Robert's Rules of Orders. And as I said to you many times in the past here, I don't think I'm going to ask them for that because everybody tells me you can't do it. But we go by Robert's Rules of Order here, and most people don't know Robert's Rules of Order. And I've seen meetings where town meetings we're supposed to run by Robert's Rules of Order, and the people who were running it didn't know what Robert's Rules of Order were. So
And then I have another little pet peeve, so I got my initials next to this, and I will submit a letter to this, and that wherever in the charter it says administer and supervise, I'd like to see it changed to what I call results-orientated words, like manage, do, produce, those kind of things. And administer and supervise, they're more bureaucratic type things, and bureaucracies use those kind of words. What we like to see is results, and we like results orientation. So I'm going to ask for that. And the next is somebody brought up that we should consider how we fill the vacancies on the Board of Education and perhaps have some rewording in the charter for that, or some wording or whatever. So that's that. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to talk about is I did a draft for discussion purposes only of an elected mayor versus an appointed town manager, pros and cons comparison. Now, this is just what I put down from my own talking to people around town and from my own views. It's not the commission's view. I am going to submit this to the commission for consideration as part of the moving along on the decision of whether or not we want to recommend or suggest a mayoral form of government. So what I did is I put together a pro and con list, as you would do when you're trying to do problem solving as a systems analyst, which I am. The first thing you do is you say, okay, we'd like to have a pros and cons comparison. What do people think are the good points of a mayoral approach, and what do people think are the bad points? Now, I think one of the people in the meeting stood up and said what thought the good points were and what the bad points were for the town manager. A lot of people stood up and said what the bad points were for the town manager. The Taxpayer Association mentioned some of the things they thought were wrong with the mayoral approach. So everybody has their views. What I'm trying to do is just write them down, absolute value of. You won't see any names on here, and you won't see any spin on them. I'm just saying, okay, so for the mayoral form, the pros, and this is just a list that could be added to, subtracted to, changed. It's just to prime the pump. I'm going to submit it for the next meeting. The pro is elected. The mayoral form is elected. A lot of people think that's a pro. Some people think it's a con. Number two, one person is held responsible and accountable if you have an elected mayor. That's the mayor. He's held. There's still going to be other bodies like the Finance Committee and the other boards, but he's really going to be in the driver's seat, and we're going to have one person held responsible and accountable, which many people don't think we have now, and that's going to be a con when I get to the next page of this document. Number three, it may provide cost savings to the town. I put a question mark on less remuneration. I've been told by some people that usually if you have an elected mayor, you might pay less than you would for an appointed town manager. I don't know if that's true or false. It's something that should be looked into, but it is something to be considered. No cost to remove them, because when the election's over, they're gone. And you don't have to pay anything to get rid of them, unless of course you fire them and they have something. If something comes up, they probably just have to resign, because I don't think they would resign. You never know. They might get ill. Something might happen there. But basically, in the long run, as you'll see on one of my future slides here, no cost to remove, and then no moving cost. I'm told sometimes we have to pay a moving cost to bring in a town manager. Sometimes we don't, but there will be no moving cost if we have this elected form. And then the local person is likely. The residency won't be a problem, because if you elect a mayor, it's most likely going to be from town. And that's good and bad. I mean, if it's from the town, that's good, but if you don't have the qualified people in town, it might not be good. So you'll see that show up again. Next is the cons, and I put on the con list for this mayoral thing, local. Is that could be a problem if we don't have the qualified people, and I don't know whether we do or don't. I just put a question mark after it. There could be discussion about that. The cows come home at the commission, and that's okay. But that's to start the thing rolling. Now, as far as the town manager form of government is concerned, I put pros, a wider choice. If you have you can have a wider choice there. So, because you can go out afield and you can hire people from anywhere. So, but then you might have other problems. Con, no one person solely held responsible. Therefore, there exists no accountability. Number two, appointed by the selectmen, voters have no direct say when you have a town manager. They're appointed by the selectmen. And the selectman may or may not represent one or more parties. It may cost more, may not, but we've got it here as a con because you have to might have more remuneration, possible moving costs, and possible severing costs like we've had for two or three times in the past here in the last few years. So we have to take that into consideration. A town manager serves multiple masters. He serves 7 selectmen that may come from 1, 2, 3, or 4, well, 2, 3, or 4 political parties, if not more, and that gets very confusing. So that's multiple masters. Number 5, politically tempting to sidle up to a party or parties in power, and that's been a problem in the past, I think, in this area. And it's kind of tough when you're trying to keep a job and feed your family and move on, but you have to go with the people that are in power. And then if the powers change, and I'll show you a quick slide in a minute where they do change and things happen. Okay, and it hasn't. This whole approach has not appeared to work in Winston today. People will argue with me about that, and a lot of people say, "Well, that's okay. We'll just strengthen it so it will work." But it's hard to work if the person is not the one who has the responsibility and the accountability. So now I'm going to show you quickly, and I'm running out of little time here, but I'm going to show you an unofficial comparison of Winston and Torrington over the last 40 so many years. I'm going to rush a little here because I have to, but all this will be submitted to the public record, and if I don't finish it today, we'll do it next week. So for Winston and Torrington, in Winston, between 1962 and 2008, 46 years, there were 13 permanent town managers, average term 3.3 years. I'm responsible for any mistakes. 94% of the time we had a permanent town manager. There are 11 acting interim town managers. I put 2 words there because they use different words sometimes, with an average of 3 months each, or a total of 2.7 years, or 6% of the time. So 6% of the time we haven't had a permanent town manager. And now remember, when you juggle these interim people, you have to take them out of other jobs they're in, with the exception of the one we have now, Bruce. He comes in from outside, and maybe some others have too. But basically, they have to leave the job they're doing, so that doesn't get done. They have to manage their peers, which is not comfortable to many people. They're not there long enough. They're not really town managers. They're finance directors or purchasing agents or planning and zoning people. So that's a thing. So total town managers, including the interim town managers, 26, and I put 27 there because soon we will have our 27th. When Bruce is gone in a month or two, then we'll have number 27. In Torrington, they've had, since 1957 to 2009, because that's how long the fellow's elected for now, 52 years, 11 mayors, averaging term of 4.73 years. And they've had a mayor 100% of the time. Now, some people say, well, when you have an elected official, you get corruption. I checked in Torrington. I don't think they've had any corruption there in this whole period of 52 years. There may be some question about that. Now, I do have a list of all. I can't go through all that now, but I did list every town Torrington mayor, and I put up the average, and I've just given you the summary of all that. Okay. Now I'm going to talk a bit about the Winston. I've got the backup detail for that, and that shows you the unofficial Winston one, which I already gave you the summary of. Here's all the town managers. I got this from the town hall. This is the permanent town managers, how many months they were in. And you have to use months for these town managers because some of them were in for a half a month, 3/4 of a month. There's no years. Some of them go, an odd time. So they don't all fall into 12-month slots like the Torrington mayors do. So that's the town managers list, and up to Owen Quinn. And then, so I have the totals for that. I'll submit all this into the public record. And then the acting ones, I listed all those, how many months they were in there. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 6, 1, 5. That is up to 35. When you divide it, you get the 2.75 years. Okay? So that's kind of what I have here tonight. I'm running out of time now, but I want to say to you once again that I am going to be submitting all this information into the public record. You'll be able to read it all. If it's wrong, we'll fix it. The commission consider it or throw it out. It's just me trying to help move things along and get all my ideas on the table and try to help then give approach for expediting this solution so we can get this thing resolved following the kind of rules that I've been talking to you about on this program. So that I will submit a letter for each of the ones that I had BOH next to. I will submit an individual letter for each one so they know what I'm submitting into the public record that wasn't done by the other public hearing or by other people by mail. I am receiving letters at my house now from people, carbon copies of letters to the editor, things like that, and that's okay. Everybody should have their say. And then a brief unofficial comparison of Winston's town manager terms and Torrington's mayoral terms. So I have done all that work this week, and I feel much more comfortable that I'm beginning to understand this situation. I'm talking to a lot of people. You can't just rely on people that come to the hearing, because they usually have an axe to grind, or they feel very strongly about certain issues, and they should. That's democracy. That's how it works. But I got to get to all the people out there, 5,500 voters, and only probably 35 of them were at this meeting. So I'm going to try to talk to as many as I can and get their input, no matter how they think, and get them to put the input in wherever they can into these hearings. So with that, we've got a few minutes to go. I want to say have a nice Martin Luther King Day. I'm going to go tonight to, it'll be tomorrow night when I have the show on, but this is Thursday now, I'm recording it, but tonight there'll be a meeting between the selectmen and the Board of Education. I'll be going to that at 7 o'clock, so next week I'll tell you a bit about that. And of course on Monday there's another, Tuesday, because of Martin Luther King Day, is another select meeting. On Tuesday there's a commission for the charter meeting, so it's going to be a pretty busy few weeks. So with that, I want to thank you for watching and have a happy Martin Luther King Day. And I'm glad that Martin Luther King was around and did what he did in a peaceful manner. And I hope we as a town can follow the same example as Gandhi and Martin Luther King. To pass my bedtime.